High Output Management by Andrew S. Grove. Introduction. What if I told you that the secret to running a billion-dollar company, to leading a team that changes the world, could be found in the simple, frantic act of making breakfast? Imagine this. You're in a kitchen. An order comes in for one soft-boiled egg, cooked for exactly 3 minutes, a piece of buttered toast, and a hot cup of coffee. All 3 items have to arrive at the same table, at the same time, perfectly fresh and hot. It sounds simple, right? But think about it. The coffee is already brewed. The toast takes a minute. The egg takes 3 minutes. If you start them all at once, the toast will be cold and the coffee lukewarm by the time the egg is ready. If you start the egg first, you have to time the toast and coffee perfectly. Now, what if the toaster is busy? What if you run out of eggs? Suddenly, this simple breakfast becomes a complex dance of timing, resources, and priorities. This little kitchen drama isn't just about breakfast. It's a miniature factory. And the man who saw this with brilliant clarity was a legend named Andrew S. Grove. You might not know his name, but you live in the world he helped build. Andy Grove was an escapee from communist Hungary who arrived in America with almost nothing. He learned English, earned a PhD, and became one of the founders of a small company you might have heard of, Intel. He didn't just help build a company, he helped build the entire digital age. In 1997, Time magazine named him Man of the Year, recognizing him as the person who had most influenced the world. And at the height of his power, as the CEO of one of the most important companies on the planet, he did something extraordinary. He stopped, and he wrote down the secrets to his success. Not in some dense, academic textbook, but in a simple, powerful guide called High Output Management. For decades, this book was the hidden gem of Silicon Valley, passed from mentor to student like a secret map. It wasn't flashy. It didn't have a catchy, 7-step formula. But it contained a revolutionary idea, that the art of management, of leading people and getting things done, isn't some mysterious talent you're born with. It's a craft. A skill. It can be learned. It can be perfected. It is, in essence, a type of production, just like making that 3-minute egg. So, here is my promise to you. Stick with me on this journey, and by the end, you will see the world differently. You look at your school projects, your first job, and even your own life, not as a series of random tasks, but as a factory you can design, manage, and optimize for incredible results. You will learn the single most important equation for any leader, and it has nothing to do with money. You'll understand how to turn any group into a high-performing team. This isn't just about becoming a manager someday. This is about becoming effective, today. So grab a cup of coffee. Let's head into the breakfast factory. Book summary. The story of high output management all begins with that simple breakfast. Grove asks us to see this not as cooking, but as a production system. To get it right, you have to identify what he calls the limiting step. That's the single longest, most difficult, or most important part of the process. In our breakfast factory, it's the 3-minute egg. Everything else, the toast, the coffee, the butter, has to be timed around that one critical item. Think about writing a big research paper for school. What's your limiting step? It's probably not the typing or the printing. It's the research itself, the long, hard work of gathering information. Everything else has to be planned around that. You don't start writing the introduction before you know what your argument is. You build your entire workflow back from that one, crucial step. This simple idea, finding the limiting step, is the first key to unlocking high output. Whether you're building a software compiler, recruiting college graduates, or even, as Grove provocatively suggests, running a criminal justice system, there is always a limiting step. Society invests over $1 million to secure a criminal conviction, he notes, yet we often fail to jail that criminal for the lack of an $80,000 jail cell. We've allowed the wrong step, the availability of cells, to limit the entire system. Once you see your work as a production line, you realize every process has three basic operations: process, assembly, and test. Boiling the egg is a process. It changes the raw material. Putting the egg, toast, and coffee on a tray is assembly. And checking to see if the toast is burnt is a test. This applies everywhere. In a software company, writing code is the process, combining it into a full program is assembly, and debugging is the test. The most important rule? You always want to find problems at the lowest value stage possible. It's far cheaper to find a rotten egg before you cook it than to have a customer find it on their plate. It's far better to find a flaw in a single line of code than after the entire program has been assembled. This is the world as Andy Grove sees it, a world of systems, of inputs and outputs. He invites us to view any organization, any team, any project as a black box. Raw materials and labor go in one side, and a finished product or service comes out the other. But if you're just looking at the final output, you're always reacting. You're always finding out about problems after they've already happened. The true art of management is learning to cut windows into that black box. How do you do that? With indicators. Measurements. These are your eyes and ears inside the factory. If you're running the breakfast factory, you don't just count the number of breakfasts served. You need 5 key pieces of information every morning. 1. What's the sales forecast for today? How many breakfasts do we expect? 2. What's our raw material inventory? Do we have enough eggs? 3. How is our equipment? Is the toaster working? 4. What's our manpower? Is anyone out sick? 5. And, crucially, what's our quality indicator? What are our customers saying? These aren't just numbers. They are signposts that tell you where to direct your attention. But Grove warns us of a trap. Indicators are powerful, and whatever you measure, you will instinctively try to improve. If you only measure how many sales calls your team makes, they'll make a lot of calls, but they might not sell anything. Activity is not the same as output. So, he introduces the idea of paired indicators. You should always measure both effect and counter-effect. Measure the number of sales calls, but pair it with the number of actual sales closed. Measure your inventory levels, but pair that with the incidence of shortages. This pairing keeps you in balance, preventing you from oversteering in one direction. This is the foundation. Seeing the world as a factory, with production lines, limiting steps, and indicators to guide you. But Grove's real genius was in applying this cold, hard, factory logic to the messiest, most unpredictable, and most important part of any organization, the people. This brings us to the single most important sentence in the entire book, the core mantra of high-output management. A manager's output is the output of the organizational units under his or her supervision or influence. Let that sink in. It doesn't say a manager's output is the reports they write, the meetings they attend, or the decisions they make. Those are just activities. A manager can do their own work perfectly, but if their team produces nothing, their output is zero. Think of a football coach. The coach doesn't run the ball or throw a single pass. But his output is the team's performance on the field. He wins or loses based on what his team achieves. Business, government, education, it's all a team game. And it takes a team to win. So if your output is your team's output, your entire job changes. The question is no longer, how can I be more productive? It's, how can I make my team more productive? The answer to that question is a powerful concept Grove calls managerial leverage. Leverage is the measure of the output generated by any given managerial activity. Some things you do have low leverage. If you spend an hour fixing a typo in a subordinate's report, you've improved one report. That's low leverage. But what if you spend that same hour teaching your subordinate how to spot and fix his own typos? You've just improved every report he will ever write for you. That is incredibly high leverage. High leverage activities fall into 3 categories. 1. When many people are affected by one manager. Think of a manager who clearly defines a project's goals at the very beginning. By spending a few hours up front, she saves hundreds of hours of confusion for her entire team down the line. That's leverage. 2. When a person's activity over a long period of time is affected by a manager's brief, well-focused action. This is the essence of a good performance review. An hour of thoughtful, honest feedback can elevate a subordinate's performance for months, or even years. That's leverage. 3. When a large group's work is affected by an individual supplying a unique, key piece of knowledge. This is the know-how manager, the expert who can solve a problem that has an entire team stuck. The art of management, Grove says, is the art of identifying and concentrating on the high-leverage activities. Your job is to constantly seek out the point where your effort will have the greatest impact on your team's output. And one of the highest leverage activities of all? Delegation. But Grove has a critical warning. Delegation without follow-through is abdication. You can never just hand off a task and wash your hands of it. You are still responsible. The way you follow through is by monitoring. Not meddling, not micromanaging, but checking in to ensure the work is on track. This monitoring is like a quality assurance check in our factory. You do it at the lowest value stage possible. You review a rough draft. You don't wait for the final polished report to find out there's a fundamental problem. Now, if so much of a manager's work is about gathering information, sharing it with their team, making decisions, and providing feedback, where does all this happen? This brings us to one of the most hated and misunderstood parts of corporate life: meetings. Most management gurus tell you to avoid meetings. Grove says that's like telling a carpenter to avoid his hammer. Meetings aren't a waste of time. They are the medium through which managerial work is done. You shouldn't be fighting their existence. You should be mastering them. He breaks them down into 2 types. Process-oriented meetings happen on a regular schedule, and their purpose is to exchange information and keep the gears of the organization turning. Mission-oriented meetings are called to solve a specific problem or make a specific decision. The most important process-oriented meeting, and one that Grove essentially invented as a formal practice, is the one-on-one. This is the sacred time between a supervisor and a subordinate. It's not a status update. It is, first and foremost, the subordinates' meeting. The agenda is theirs. The purpose is mutual teaching and the exchange of information. The supervisor's job is to listen and to coach. Grove's principle here is simple but profound. Ask one more question. When you think your subordinate has said everything they want to say about a topic, ask another question. Keep gently probing until you both feel you've gotten to the heart of the matter. A one-on-one is where you uncover the subtle, nagging problems that never make it into a formal report. It's where trust is built. And it is the absolute foundation for effective delegation. You can't delegate effectively if you don't have a shared base of information and a common understanding of how to solve problems. That shared understanding is forged in the one-on-one. The leverage here is immense. 90 minutes of your time can improve your subordinate's work for 2 weeks, or 80+ hours. The second type of process meeting is the staff meeting. This is where the supervisor and all their subordinates meet as a group. Its purpose is to foster interaction among peers. This is where the team learns to make decisions together, where different perspectives collide, and where a better understanding emerges from the debate. The supervisor's role here is not to lecture, but to be a moderator, keeping the discussion on track and ensuring the real issues are being worked by the team. The final meeting type is the mission-oriented meeting, called to make a decision. The key to success here, Grove says, lies with the chairman. And their work happens before the meeting even begins. They must be crystal clear on the meeting's objective. What decision needs to be made? Who needs to be there? Then, during the meeting, their job is to guide the group through an ideal decision-making process, which has 3 stages. 1. Free discussion. All points of view are welcomed and debated. The more controversial the issue, the more important it is that this discussion is completely open. This is where you bring together people with position power, the managers, and people with knowledge power, the experts. Status symbols are stripped away, and everyone contributes as an equal. 2. Clear decision. Once the debate has run its course, a decision must be made and stated with absolute clarity. The tendency is to get fuzzy here, to avoid offending anyone. Grove says this is a mistake. An argument postponed is not an argument avoided. 3. Full support. Finally, and this is crucial, everyone involved must commit to supporting the decision, even if they don't agree with it. An organization doesn't live by its members agreeing on everything. It lives by its members committing to a unified course of action. This process is often sabotaged by what Grove calls the peer group syndrome. When a group of equals gets together without a clear leader, they often talk in circles, afraid to stick their necks out until a consensus magically emerges. Someone needs to step up, either the person with the most at stake or a senior figure, to break the deadlock and guide the group to a clear decision. We've designed our factory, we've learned how to use our managerial tools, but now we arrive at the engine room, the people themselves, the players on the team. Here, Grove offers another brilliantly simple diagnostic. When a person is not doing their job, there can only be two reasons for it. Either they can't do it, or they won't do it. They are either not capable or not motivated. To figure out which it is, Grove proposes a simple mental test. If the person's life depended on doing the work, could they do it? If the answer is yes, they're not motivated. If the answer is no, they're not capable. If my life depended on running a mile in 6 minutes, I probably could. I'm capable, just not motivated. But if my life depended on playing a violin concerto, I couldn't do it. I'm not capable. This simple distinction gives a manager their two primary tools for improving an individual's performance: training to address capability and motivation to address willingness. Grove believed that motivation comes from within. A manager can't make someone motivated. But what they can do, and must do, is create an environment where motivated people can flourish. To understand this environment, he turns to psychologist Abraham Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs. At the bottom, you have physiological needs: food, shelter, the things money can buy. Then comes safety and security. Then social needs, the need to belong to a group. These first three levels are what get us to show up for work. But what makes us perform once we're there are the two highest levels: esteem, the need for recognition and respect, and at the very top, self-actualization. Self-actualization, for Grove, is the burning internal drive to achieve one's personal best. It's the engine of peak performance. It's the virtuoso violinist who practices endlessly, not for applause, but to get a little closer to perfection. It's the athlete running a marathon, pushing themselves to exhaustion, not for money, but just to beat the clock, to go a little further, a little faster than before. This is the sports analogy. Why do athletes push themselves to such incredible heights? They are competing against an opponent, against the clock, against their own previous record. They have a clear goal and, crucially, they get immediate, task-relevant feedback on their performance. The manager's job is to be a coach. And a coach's job is to turn the workplace into a playing field. This means creating a racetrack for your subordinates. You establish clear rules and, most importantly, you create ways for them to measure themselves. When people have a clear measure of their own performance, and can see it improving, they start to compete with their own personal best. This is when the limitless energy of self-actualization kicks in. But how does a coach get the best out of each individual player? A single coaching style won't work for everyone. A rookie needs a different approach than a seasoned veteran. This brings us to the master key of individual management: task-relevant maturity, or TRM. This is not about a person's age or general intelligence. It is their experience, confidence, and readiness to take responsibility for a specific task. A person can have high TRM in one area and very low TRM in another. The optimal management style changes dramatically depending on the subordinate's TRM. When TRM is low, they are new to the task. The most effective style is highly structured. You tell them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. It's clear, precise, and directive. Think of teaching a child to ride a bike for the first time. You hold the seat. You give constant instructions. When TRM is medium, they're getting the hang of it. The style shifts to communication, coaching, and support. You focus less on the how and more on two-way conversation, encouragement, and mutual reasoning. You're no longer holding the bike, but you're running alongside, ready to help. When TRM is high, they're an expert. Your involvement should be minimal. You agree on the objectives, and then you get out of the way. Your role becomes one of monitoring to make sure things stay on track. The child is now riding the bike on their own, and you just watch from a distance to make sure they're safe. Your goal as a manager is to raise the TRM of your people as quickly as possible. Why? Because the higher their TRM, the less of your time they need, the more you can delegate, and the higher your leverage becomes. This is how you scale. The most powerful tool a manager has for raising TRM and providing the feedback that fuels motivation is the performance review. Grove sees this as the single most important form of task-relevant feedback you can provide. It is one of your highest leverage activities. But most managers are terrible at it. We're culturally conditioned to avoid confrontation. The review becomes a vague, uncomfortable ritual. To do it right, Grove offers 3 simple rules, the 3 L's. 1. Level. Be completely, brutally honest. The credibility of the entire system depends on your frankness. This is as true for praise as it is for criticism. 2. Listen. This is not just about letting them talk. It's about using all your senses to ensure your message is actually being received. Are they understanding you, or are they just waiting for their turn to speak? Watch their body language. Ask questions. Don't stop until you are certain the thought in your brain has successfully transferred to theirs. 3. Leave yourself out. The review is about them, not you. Your insecurities, your guilt, your desire to be liked, all of it must be pushed aside. It is their day in court. Finally, Grove expands his lens one last time. We've gone from the breakfast, to the factory, to the manager, to the players on the team. But what happens when the team becomes a team of teams? What happens when the breakfast factory goes national? You're now running a vast network. Some things, like purchasing equipment, should be centralized to get economies of scale. Other things, like hiring local staff or advertising in the local paper, should be decentralized, left to the franchise manager who knows the local community. This creates a natural tension. The desire for local responsiveness pushes you toward decentralization, a mission-oriented structure. The desire for efficiency and leverage pushes you toward centralization, a functional structure. The result, Grove says, is inevitable. He proposes Grove's law. All large organizations with a common business purpose end up in a hybrid organizational form. You see it everywhere. An army has its mission-oriented fighting units, but it also has its functional groups for supply, intelligence, and payroll that serve all the units. A university has its mission-oriented departments, math, English, history, and its functional administration for HR, security, and the library. This hybrid world is messy. It's ambiguous. To make it work, you need a system where people report to more than one boss. A factory controller, for example, reports to the factory manager for their daily mission, but they also report to the corporate director of finance for their professional standards and methods. This is dual reporting. It's the mechanism that allows the hybrid organization to function. It requires a strong corporate culture, a shared set of values, and a high degree of trust. It's not clean, it's not simple, but it is the best way for a business to be organized. It is the price you pay, and the reward you get, for building something that scales. From a single egg to a global corporation, the principles remain the same. Define your output. Find your limiting step. Use leverage. Coach your team. And never, ever forget that your success is measured not by what you do, but by what your team achieves. That is the timeless wisdom of high-output management. Commentary. When you step back and look at the world Andy Grove built, it's easy to get lost in the technology, the microprocessors, the incredible complexity of Silicon Valley. But the real legacy of high-output management is its profound humanity. It's a book that takes the seemingly cold, impersonal world of business and reminds us that at its heart, it's all about people. The most powerful lesson, for me, is the shift in perspective it demands. Before this book, management was often seen as a position of status. You were the boss. You made the decisions. Your job was to be important. Grove demolishes that idea. He redefines a manager's job as one of service. Your job is not to be important. Your job is to make your team successful. Your output is their output. It's a deeply humbling and deeply empowering idea. It turns leadership from a title into a responsibility. What makes this book so timeless is that these principles aren't just for CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. They are for anyone who works in a group, on any project. It's a universal operating system for getting things done with other people. The concept of task-relevant maturity is something you can use right now, in a group project at school. Are your partners new to the topic? Then you need to be structured. Are they experts? Then just agree on the goal and trust them. It's a practical, compassionate way to lead. So, how can you start applying these ideas today, long before you have a formal management title? Here are 3 simple actions. First, define your output. The next time you start a project, whether it's for school, a club, or a part-time job, ask that simple question: what is the actual output here? Not the activities, not the tasks, but the final, measurable result. Then ask, what is the limiting step? Just this simple act of framing your work will bring incredible clarity. Second, try a real one-on-one. This might sound strange, but find a partner you're working with on something important. Set aside 30 minutes and tell them, this is your meeting. I just want to listen. What's on your mind? What are the biggest challenges you're seeing? What can I do to help? Don't try to solve their problems. Just listen, and ask one more question. You will be amazed at what you learn and how much stronger that partnership becomes. And third, find your own racetrack. Whatever skill you're trying to build, whether it's coding, writing, or playing a sport, find a way to measure your performance. Track your progress. Compete with yourself. Create that feedback loop that Grove talks about. It's the engine of self-actualization, and it's how you unlock your own personal best. That was a summary of High Output Management by Andrew S. Grove. We've hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read the book yourself. It's in the quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly hope you'll grab a copy, because reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your work, your teams, and your own potential. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It tells us we're on the right track, and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.